All right, my boy Sergachev. He asked a question on the Discord. All right, here we go.
Here's the prep.
So David Amber asks Anthony Stewart, former Thrasher, and Elliot Friedman at the intermission who they think has the best defense in the North Division. Apparently, they both answered the Canadiens. Who has the best D in the North Division?
So, you had no time to prep for this question. I went extremely in depth with my research on this. Would you like to give your opinion before I break down the defense cores of the 7 teams in the North Division?
I mean, it's gotta be Winnipeg. There's no way it's not Winnipeg.
Who's to say?
I mean, because I'm including the goalie as a member of the defense.
Okay, so I didn't do that. I just looked at the six forwards, the 6 defensemen that played the most games so far.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's got to be either Montreal or Winnipeg. Like, it can't be Toronto. I don't know. Yeah, let's break it down.
Let's break it down. Toogie's Take North Division Defense Core Edition. Number 7, the worst top 6 defensemen in the North Division belongs to the Edmonton Oilers. Controversial as it may be, the Oilers defense absolutely sucks. And allow me to explain.
I mean,
although Deej, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say they've got that guy. His last name's Bear. They've got Donovan McNabb's nephew.
All right.
I mean, I think that. I mean, case in point, they sound great.
So allow me to explain. Darnell Nurse, great offensively. He is atrocious in his own zone.
Some would say he could quarterback a power play.
Some would say. Tyson Barrie. He's had a good bounce back after leaving Toronto. He's still good offensively. Abysmal defensively. William Lagesson. Good defensively. Great on the PK. Still not all that good. Average. Probably slightly below average. Adam Larson. Slightly above average. Still good defensively. His offense has fallen off, which isn't saying much because his offense wasn't that good to begin with. Chris Russell is atrocious, but he's still okay defensively. And then Ethan Bear, decent, slightly below average. You know, I was looking at certain numbers, point totals, the analytics side of things, and this season, like, I think the only guy that you can say in terms of like a well-rounded, mainly I guess the analytical side of things with, like, you know, WAR and everything, the only guy who's like above average is Adam Larson. Everybody else is atrocious, and I don't know how to explain it because their goaltending with Mike Smith is relatively decent. So I don't know what is up with these defensive numbers. Caleb Jones could be a bit of an X factor. He's around that average level, but yeah, I don't think people realize that, like, Darnell Nurse's impact on the game defensively overrides what he does offensively, even though he does a lot offensively. Edmonton's defense core, upon further inspection, is easily the worst in the North Division, in my opinion.
Well, you bring up Adam Larson, and I know we shit on Peter Chiarelli a lot, but did you know he has more goals than Taylor Hall this year?
Hockey is...
Because that's looking like a steal.
Hockey is so cruel sometimes. Oh, my God. Anyway, that Edmonton talk aside.
So Oilers are last.
I do have Edmonton last. Second bottom, the Vancouver Canucks. It's relatively close, but the fact that Alex Edler has had a bit of an underrated return to form offensively. He's still, approaching good territory, certainly above average. Nate Schmidt's in the same territory. It's been a rough debut year in Vancouver, but he's still solid offensively. You have Quinn Hughes as well, who's had a brutal second year. He's regressed across the board, but he's still an offensive play driver and right in that mix with Edler and Schmidt. So those three kind of help keep this defense afloat. because then you get into Travis Hamonic, which, yikes. Like, his offense is dropping off. It's still okay. His defense is getting better, but still is very bad. So it shows you how bad it was getting in Calgary. He's not great. Even worse, Jordy Ben. Better than he was last year, but still awful. So yikes. He's still good on the PK, though. And then Tyler Myers, who is one of the worst defensemen in the North Division. Arguably the worst. He's okay offensively. Defensively, it's abysmal. He might actually have the worst contract in the league. So looking at certain numbers, and on average here, Edler, Schmidt, and Hughes keep Vancouver in a decent spot. But those latter three, even though Hamonic hasn't played full-time, like Chatfield and Levy have played a bit, but God, yeah, no, Vancouver's defense isn't that great either.
So I know this is I'm gonna get some backlash for saying this on the podcast. I don't follow the Canucks very closely. They are just geographically
Nobody blames you.
So far away.
Nobody blames you.
I know we brought this up in the season preview. Has Ollie Juolevi have his injury problems returned? Because he is a guy that should be like a stud defenseman, but he always finds a way to break a weird bone.
I don't know what's going on with him right now, admittedly, because, I mean, much like you, I haven't paid that much attention to Vancouver because why the hell would I? But, I mean, maybe. It's tough to say. I mean, in terms of like how well he's done this season, I didn't really hear too many Canucks fans complain. But, yeah, weird spot.
Yeah, I remember in January he scored like his first career goal. I'll do some research on this. I'll give a Juolevi update on Friday. That's what I'll do.
In fifth place, I have the Winnipeg Jets. And this surprised me.
Okay. This is fascinating.
This surprised me as well. Do
they just have Neil and no one else?
Yeah. It's Neil and one other guy. Shockingly, now I was going off of, again, the 6 defensemen that played the most games, and right now on Cap Friendly, Winnipeg's top pairing is Josh Morrissey and Tucker Poolman, who are both surprisingly atrocious. And specifically with Josh Morrissey, he's okay offensively. His defensive metrics have never been great, and they're still horrible. And he's someone else on a rough contract, Deej. I don't know. Take a shot in the dark at Josh Morrissey's contract.
Oh, God. Is he making over 5?
Yes.
I feel like... Is his contract as bad as Anton Strawman's? Strawman's making 5.5 for 2 more years.
Oh, it's worse. Josh Morrissey is 25 years old, so we'll see. But he is making $6.3 million for the next 8 years. This is year 1 of 8. And
oh God,
from an analytics standpoint,
last year that they paid him for.
From an analytics standpoint, he is the worst of Winnipeg's top 6 defensemen this season so far. Is it the role that they're playing him in? Maybe, but I was shocked to see this. Like Tucker Poolman as well is right around that. He is in that pure abysmal territory. His defense is better than it was last year, but it's still horrific. He's played way above his role, and I think Jets fans could admit that too. But yeah, I was shocked. Like you look at Morrissey and Pullman's numbers defensively, it's bad. In terms of the second pairing, like Derek Forbort's like a slightly above average defenseman still. Like he's regressing, but he's still solid defensively. And then you get to Neil. Good old Neil, who was in my opinion, good territory, right?
Neil Pell.
Great offense. His defense is improving a bit, so... Neil is solid. Logan Stanley, who scored his first NHL goal this past week, he's okay. He's below average, better defensively, which isn't surprising. He's very sheltered, though, with his usage. And then you get to the best defenseman on the team, and it's Dylan DeMello, who is fantastic. And he was signed to like a $3 million 3x4 or 4x3. He's dropping off a bit, but Dylan DeMello, who was one of the most underrated defensemen last year, continues to be one of the most underrated defensemen, and I have him as Winnipeg's best defenseman so far this year in terms of an all-around, aspect. But all in all, it's shocking to see kind of the defenses here that we're seeing. You have 2 playoff teams in my bottom 3 from an individual statistical standpoint. Now, of course, you can sit there and talk about the systems they play in, the goaltenders, and why they are where they are. But if you look at the individuals, yeah, bottom 3, Edmonton, Vancouver, and Winnipeg.
Holy cow.
Would you?
So
The top 4, should we go to them?
I'm going to guess that the Flames are, I'm going to guess that I may have underrated the Flames here is what I'm thinking, but I don't want you to spoil anything. Who's number 4?
Number 4, I disagree with David Amber and Mr. Stewart. We have the Montreal Canadiens at number 4. Again,
Interesting.
On Cap Friendly right now, Joel Edmondson, who is abysmal. And he's improved this year, and he's still abysmal. Big yikes. Shea Weber, above average. His offense is dropping off despite some good metrics. His defense is bouncing back. Shea Weber is still a very useful NHL defenseman, but he's not up, in these higher levels anymore. Then shockingly, you get Brett Kulak, who is absolutely up there. Arguably, from an analytical standpoint, a play driving standpoint, better than Jeff Petrie. Arguably. Brett Kulak, a very underrated defender.
Really?
And then you get to Jeff Petrie, who is obviously still great. He's great offensively. The defense is down a little bit, but obviously with Jeff Petrie right now, he is riding a bender where he is just putting up points at an unbelievable pace. So that's not to sit here and say, Brett Kulak's better than Jeff Petrie. I'd rather have him than Jeff Petrie. But, again, from an analytical standpoint, that just goes to show that, hey, Jeff Petrie's great. And right now on Cap Friendly, he's on a line with Brett Kulak. So, who's the straw that stirs the drink there? Who's to say? And then third pairing, or at least it's not their active third pairing. But then you have Alex Romanoff, who, slightly below average, decent offensively so far. He's not bad. And then I believe he's currently injured, but they have Ben Sherratt, who is also in the horror bad territory. And he's gotten better this year than a 5-on-5 perspective, but he's still brutal. So again, you look at Kulak and Petrie are both great. Weber's solid. Romanoff slightly below average, but then Edmondson and Sherratt just tank that defense. So it's not as bad of a situation where you have someone who you think is like Josh Morrissey in Winnipeg, where it's this guy needs to carry the weight. It's not that bad, but Montreal's outside of my top 3, which is very controversial because that means there are 2 non-playoff teams in the top 3.
Jeez. Also, Sherratt, if I'm not mistaken, he was one of the last few guys drafted as a Thrasher, which is, I don't know why. Fun Thrasher facts.
Now I need to look this up because there can never be enough Thrasher facts. Indeed, 4th round pick in 2009. So one of the penultimate draft for the Thrashers, because of course Winnipeg was back the next year. So.
Obviously slightly off topic before we get to the final 3, but I'm always a little upset that Winnipeg didn't go with the Thrashers design for the reverse retro.
Yeah. No, I don't blame you. Fun fact.
Rad. All right.
The last draft pick in Atlanta Thrashers history, defenseman Peter Stojkovic, who has one of my favorite names. So shout out to Peter. He never played an NHL game, but good on to Peter.
Hey,
boy,
Pete.
if you look at this 2010 draft class for the Thrashers, no wonder they moved.
It was the final nail in the coffin.
Oh my God. Well, let's segue. They took Alex Burmistrov 8th overall. He played almost 350 NHL games. That's cool. They didn't have a 2nd round pick. They took Julian Melchiori in the 3rd round, who played 30 NHL games, so whatever. 4th round, they take Ivan Teligan, who didn't play an NHL game. 5th round, goaltender Frederick Pettersson-Wetzel, never played an NHL game. And Yassine Cisse.
That's such a good name.
Who never played an NHL game. 6th round, defenseman Kendall McFall, no NHL games. Forward Tanner Lane in the 6th round, no NHL games. And the 3rd pick of the 6th round, Sebastian Lance-Awuya, no NHL games. And in the 7th round, Peter Stojkovic, no NHL games. Jesus Christ. Say what you want.
Can you imagine having 3 picks in that 6th round and
oh my God,
not getting Mark Stone?
Just the management. I've said it before. I feel so bad for Thrashers fans because that team was so brutally mismanaged on so many levels. It's unreal. That said,
Well, they were the only reason they acquired players was for marketing. We'll get into that another time.
The top three. Let's get, this is just the first question. I said the show was going to be shorter. Jesus. Number 3, the Ottawa Senators. And I can't believe it.
Really?
But here is why.
Thanks, good Branson.
Thomas Chabot is elite offensively. Elite. His defense went from bad to horror bad, but Thomas Chabot, from an offensive standpoint, absolutely picked up the ball where Erik Karlsson had to drop it off. He's great. Then apparently he's on the top pairing with Nikita Zaitsev, who is the worst defenseman in the North Division. I'm not joking. He is undisputedly the worst division, or the worst defenseman in this division from the, I mean, God, what is basic math? What is basic math of the, oh my God, I'm blowing it. Of the 42 defensemen, technically 43 that I looked at, he is the worst by far. And he's actually gotten better offensively this year, but his defense off the cliff. But then from there, the most controversial player in the North Division is defenseman Mike Riley, who is a fantastic offensive play driver and okay defensively. But anytime you hear the name Mike Riley this season, it's because he has made a horrific defensive mistake and gotten completely torched. I compare him almost to Jake Gardiner, where Jake Gardiner, as Leafs fans will tell you, when he was on his game, he was pretty good. But you wouldn't often hear about him when he was on his game because everyone was waiting for that mistake that he'd make. And good God, when Jake Gardiner made mistakes. As a Bruins fan, I can tell you that. So yeah, Mike Riley's a really interesting case where I think he's the type of guy, if someone doesn't side on the analytics side of things, they'll be like, see, look, analytics say that Mike Riley's good, and I see him with my eyes. So that is what it is. But underrated. They signed a defenseman from the KHL this year named Artyom Zub. Regardless, he's fantastic defensively. Like, he's not going to get, and I think he's over the age limit, he's not going to get any shouts for Rookie of the Year or anything like that. But he's actually a really good defensive option. So that was a really good pickup for them. Then you get to Eric Brandstrom, who's just been meh, unfortunately. I mean, everyone, that whole story has been talked about a lot in terms of how well he fits in with the team.
Yeah.
He's not currently...
Well, they thought he was going to be the next Chabot.
Right, and he's not currently playing. Right now it's Braden Coburn, who hasn't played enough to really kind of register for these metrics. And then the last guy, the sixth man, is Eric Branson, who, of course, is awful. Again, another instance of a player on this Ottawa team.
He's the Sean William Scott frontrunner.
It's another instance of a guy whose offense is...
I believe he is.
I think so too. Yeah, look that up. His offense has peaked a little bit. And again, his defense, any shred of defense he had left has just tanked. So, you know, is that in relation to the goaltending struggles? I mean, again, a lot of these stats don't necessarily look at those goaltending struggles. But yeah, Ottawa boosted big time, at least looking at the 6 individuals and kind of averaging it out. Ottawa's boosted big time by Chabot, surprisingly Mike Riley, and Artyom Zub for sure. So I was very surprised at that.
I'll give the Sean William Scott trophy update after this little segment because it's worth mentioning. The race is actually fascinating right now.
Okay, so
the final
the top 2, and we'll go with number 1 because obviously it'll give it away. It's either Calgary or Toronto. The number 1 defense in the North Division belongs to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now,
I'm sorry, which podcast is this? I mean, it kind of doesn't surprise me. That defense, like, they made some additions that have finally taken a step forward.
Right. So I'll talk about Calgary first, though. Mark Giordano, still good, above average. He's fallen off a little bit. Rasmus Andersson is someone where you look at his numbers and you're like, huh? Because he has that reputation of like, oh yeah, Rasmus Andersson's great, but he's a below average defender right now. He's had a pretty big decline this year. Noah Hannafin, though, is still great. Like, the offense is falling back a little bit, but he's had big defensive improvements this year. Chris Tanev, very good pickup for them. He's had a big bounce back. He stayed healthy. He's been pretty good defensively. He's an above average to good addition for that blue line. And then what helps out Calgary is that they don't have an abysmal defender or two. You know, if you look back at Edmonton, like I said, the numbers for like Chris Russell and Darnell Nurse drag that rating down. For Vancouver, Myers, Ben, and Hamonic. For Winnipeg, Morrissey and Pullman. For Montreal, Edmondson, Sherratt. You get the point. Calgary, I mean, their two worst defensemen this season have been Nikita Nesterov and Juuso Valimaki, who are both in between below average and bad to meh. Like, they're not atrocious. So from an overall standpoint, Calgary is pretty solid, even though they only have one defenseman who I'd qualify as good to great in Noah Hannafin. But then you get to Toronto. And again, it's the well-rounded approach.
So, yeah, I was going to say, so it is the well-rounded approach, right? Like, it's not like Toronto has the best defenseman in the North Division, right?
Well, I mean, looking at the numbers, I honestly think they do for this season. And any guess who the best defenseman in the North Division is right now?
So, I mean, obviously, if you would want to say Morgan Riley here, but I think it might go a little deeper than that. I would be absolutely fascinated if it was TJ Brody.
You nailed it.
Is it TJ Brody?
You nailed it.
So Calgary, all they had to do was re-sign him, and they could have had the title.
Yeah. No, yeah. If they still had TJ Brody over the likes of Nikita Nesterov, they would have the best defense. And the funny thing is, like, and again, I'm not saying this is the best way to look at it. To look at six individuals, come up with a number next to them, and average it out. I'm not saying that's the best way to say who has the best defense, but in terms of the six individuals and their performance so far, it's not even close. Like, the Leafs blow everybody out of the water. And it's because Morgan Riley is still fantastic offensively. There's been a lot of talks about his defense being garbage this year, and it's always kind of been garbage. But Morgan Riley is a fantastic offensive defenseman. But then you get the TJ Brody, and his offense is still good. It's actually dropped off a little bit, which isn't surprising. It's not his role on that top pair to play offense. It's his role to shut things down defensively, and he's absolutely tremendous. So any hype you've had, you may have heard from Leafs fans saying, "Oh my God, TJ Brody's this defensive revelation." Yeah, no, he's absolutely deserving of that hype. Jake Muzzin as well is still great. Offensively, he was a bit underrated in the past. The offense has dropped off a bit, but like defensively, he's getting better, which is scary. And then, as Leafs fans can tell you, the emergence of Justin Hall, a solid defender, good PK numbers too. Like, Justin Hall's emergence has helped out this defense a lot. Travis Dermott too, above average. I mean, he's dropped off a bit on both sides, but he is still really good defensively. The one bad note on this defense right now, in terms of, again, the six defensemen who have played the most games, is Zach Bogosian, who, from an analytical standpoint, is that going to show up to what Zach Bogosian provides in terms of leadership, the physical game? No. From an analytical standpoint, obviously, I don't think anyone's going to be surprised to hear that Zach Bogosian is a big yikes on that blue line, which is why you always see articles from people who are in the analytics community saying, yeah, Leafs fans want Taylor Hall, Philip Forsberg, but they need a defenseman. They need an Ekholm. And I think say what you want about the Leafs goaltending situation, but man, if the Leafs get a defenseman to replace Zach Bogosian, I mean, it was already tough to say they weren't going to come out of the North Division, but they literally have one weak link on that defense.
Yeah, that, and then just a fun fact about Zach Bogosian. If you bring up his official NHL page, his headshot, he looks exactly like homeless Austin Matthews. It's great. Like, it's uncanny. So that's crazy. So the Leafs actually figured out how to play defense.
Yeah.
While paying 50% of your salary cap to three guys.
Yeah. I mean, when you put it that way, but
go figure.
It's fair play to Kyle Dubas, man. The moves that he's made to trade for Jake Muzzin and sign TJ Brody, they have really, really paid off.